If success is just about hard work, why do some people struggle in one place yet thrive in another? Welcome to Thrive with Dr. Liz, where we hack the spaces around us to unlock success. Let's dive in. We all love a good success story. The scrappy entrepreneur who built an empire from their garage, the underdog athlete who defied the odds. In fact, they're my favorite true story movies. The self-made CEO who climbed the corporate ladder by sheer force and will. These stories all tell us the same thing. If you work hard enough, want it badly enough, you'll succeed. But that's not the only important ingredient for success, because for every person who beats the odds, there are thousands just as talented, just as hardworking who don't. And it's not because they don't try hard enough, it's because the conditions around them weren't setting them up to win. Now, behavioral science backs this up. We tend to think of ourselves as independent decision makers, but research shows that 80% of our actions are shaped by the environment around us. That means your space, whether it's your workplace, your team, your relationships, even the way your physical space is set up, has a massive influence over how you behave. And this isn't just about individuals. If you're a leader, or manager, or responsible for shaping team culture, this applies to you too. The way a space is designed, physically, socially, structurally, it really determines how people behave within it. This is why organizations see huge differences in performance between teams, even when they're working within the same company. Some teams thrive, innovate, and hit their goals, while others struggle with disengagement, turnover, and burnout. It's not just about the talent, it's about the conditions that talent operate within. In behavioral economics, this is called choice architecture, the way a space is structured to push certain behaviors and make others harder. And once you start seeing it, you actually really can't unsee it. Welcome to my life. Ever noticed how grocery stores put impulse buys right at the checkout, or how casinos make it nearly impossible to see a clock? That's choice architecture in play. They're structuring the space so that you make decisions that serve their interests, not necessarily yours. Now, this doesn't just happen in consumer spaces. It is happening in your workplace, in your team culture, and in how you structure meetings, feedback, promotions, leadership decisions. I mean, pretty much in everything that an organization does. Let's say you work in a company where no one really knows what success looks like. The goals keep changing. Expectations are vague. And if you make a mistake, you get blamed instead of supported. I know we've all been there. Over time, what happens? Well, we know people stop taking risks. They start playing it safe. They wait for permission instead of trusting their instincts. They do the bare minimum to avoid getting in trouble rather than pushing to do something great. And eventually, they stop growing, not because they aren't actually even capable, but because the space around them is subtly, constantly training them not to grow. Now let's flip that. Imagine another company where the expectations are clear, where people feel safe to take risks, where mistakes are treated as learning opportunities instead of failures. Same person, same skills, same work ethic, completely different outcomes. Because here's the thing, your environment is either nudging you toward success or making success feel like a fight, like a real challenge. This is why even the most talented people don't always win, and why even average performers can excel in the right space. And if you've ever had that feeling, the one where you start to doubt yourself, where you go from confident to hesitant, I call it when you lose your mojo, where you start questioning if you're really as good as you thought. Chances are in that situation, it's not you. It is your space. One of the biggest mistakes I see individuals and organizations make is assuming that struggling in one environment means a person isn't cut out for success. I see this all the time with employees who switch jobs. They leave a company where they actually were thriving, where they felt valued, clear on their role, motivated. And in fact, a lot of those times, those people are getting headhunted. And then they move to another job and suddenly they're not succeeding like the organization was expecting, or in fact, they were expecting. And they're failing. And they think, what's wrong with me? And the organization thinks, what's wrong with you? But what if the question isn't what's wrong with me, but what's different about this space? And for leaders, what if the question isn't why isn't this employee performing, but what conditions am I creating that make high performance easy or impossible? When I work with companies, I always ask them, do you have more of a talent problem or a space problem? Anecdotally, don't quote me, but I'm saying 9 times out of 10, it's a space problem. People don't stop being smart, hardworking, or capable overnight. But if they're in a space where the conditions don't support them, they'll struggle. They'll burn out, they'll disengage, and they'll underperform. That's why this is so important. Because if you don't recognize the influence of the space you're in or that you're creating, you'll keep trying to fix yourself or blame individuals and others when what really needs to fix is the conditions that we're all working within. Now, this is where things get interesting, because knowing that space affects success is one thing, but understanding why some spaces create high performance and others don't, that's where the real power is. In behavioral science, we talk about friction and fuel. Friction is anything in your environment that slows you down, confuses you, or makes your job harder than it needs to be, or directs you in a different direction. Fuel is anything that accelerates your progress, gives you clarity, and makes success feel easier. Now, the problem is most people don't notice friction. They just feel the effects of it. So let's break this down. A high-performance space has low friction and high fuel. So employees know exactly what success looks like. They get feedback that helps them improve, not just criticism when they mess up. Leadership makes decisions clear and removes roadblocks. People feel safe to speak up, contribute ideas, and take risks. Now let's flip that in contrast. A less than good space or a bad space has high friction and low fuel. Employees are constantly guessing about what's expected of them. They don't get real feedback, just vague advice like, be more proactive. Leadership contradicts itself, so no one knows what's actually important. People don't feel safe to ask questions, so they stay quiet and just try to get by. When you're in a space with high friction, your brain is constantly burning energy just trying to navigate the chaos. You're not using that energy to grow, learn, innovate. Really, you're just using it to survive. And that's why so many people and teams feel stuck. It's not that they don't have the skills or potential. It's that they're in a space that's draining their energy instead of directing it toward meaningful progress and outcomes. So if you're feeling stuck, exhausted, or like you're fighting an uphill battle every single day, ask yourself this. Am I actually bad at this? Or is my space just making it harder than it needs to be? For leaders, are you expecting people to perform at their best while designing a space that makes it nearly impossible? Because once you identify the friction in your space, you can start figuring out how to reduce it. And sometimes that means changing small things in your environment. Sometimes it means shifting leadership behaviors. And sometimes it means recognizing the space you're in might not be fixable. But we'll get to that soon. For now, just sit with this. If you've been struggling for a long time, if you've been feeling drained instead of energized, it's worth asking, what if the real problem isn't you? What if it's the friction in your space? And once you know that, what might you do differently? Because that's where real change starts.